Secrecy and exclusivity are deeply encoded into almost any extensive tradition in occultism. I mean, it's in the name, occult, hidden, I get it. But I mean, I don't know, help me out here. I'm going to recite a passage from the Arbital, a 16th century-ish Latin grimoire. Whosoever would know secrets, let him know how to keep secret things secretly, and seal those things which are to be sealed. Do not give what is holy to the dogs, nor cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn against you, to tear you into pieces. Later, Eliphas Levi, Waite, Israel Regardie, I mean a whole host of Western ceremonial magicians and occult authors quote that or paraphrase it in their own writings. You know, in the classic sevenfold path you find written across so many texts on Renaissance magic, one of those 7 principles is secrecy, to keep secret the knowledge you attain of the sacred mysteries. The 4 directives of the Magus, one of the 4 therefore underscoring just how important this concept is to keep silent, and that directive is most often associated with the zodiac sign Scorpio, the sign of the occult and the esoteric. So if you want to talk precedent, I mean, the more challenging exercise here would be to find at least one authoritative text that says, tell all, spill your beans, shout out the sacred mysteries from the rooftops. Likewise, I grew up in an Eastern tradition and surrounded by a very specific cultural thought, which was, again, that the sacred mysteries should be kept secret. Sacred and secret go hand in hand, and if you remove the secrecy, you also strip away the sacred. And yet, what fueled everything that I have been doing here has been a rejection of that idea. No matter how I'm indoctrinated, in my guts I can't help feeling what I feel, which is that there should not be a firewall built around knowledge, especially esoteric knowledge. So here's what I figured out so far for myself, and then the rest beyond that, is a big question mark. Esoteric knowledge, right, to diagram it, maybe, is this construct with many, many different layers, and let's say you actually want someone to fully attain that knowledge. You need to walk them through the succession of all the layers from the top surface all the way down to the bottom, and it's only once they reach that deepest layer do they fully understand even what was up at the top. The experience, the direct experience of journeying through all the layers in succession is part and parcel to the knowledge itself. Meaning, or what I'm trying to say here, is that the sacred mysteries is an experience. It is knowledge that can only be attained by experience and no other way. I can't tell you about them. You can't learn it from me or from a book or anyone really. You have to personally experience it to know. You must bear witness. So I feel like that much I can get behind. I can sign off on, But then here's the question. If that's the case, if nothing I say or do can actually reveal the mysteries to you because it's something you have no choice but to experience for yourself, then why is one of the directives still to keep silent? If it doesn't matter one bit what I say or tell you because me telling doesn't result in you attaining any knowledge at all, because you attaining that knowledge is predicated entirely on your own experience of it, then who cares what I say? And that's where I get stumped. Back to the metaphor of the sacred mysteries as being layered, and full knowledge of the mysteries means immersing yourself down through each one of those layers one by one. Layers, levels, degrees. So then maybe the problem with giving free and public access to esoteric knowledge, I guess, is people seize the top layer and then just run off with it. The problem with that is how you understand and how you approach that top layer requires an understanding of those bottom layers, which the public has not bothered to dive down for, and so they're working with just that top layer out of context. But then my question still stands. So what? What they know isn't these sacred mysteries. It's just some distortion of it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Every single mundane aspect of life is nothing more than a distortion of these sacred mysteries, is it not? I distinctly remember having this conversation. No, it wasn't a conversation, it was a lecture. I was being talked at, so it wasn't a conversation. I didn't get to talk back. Sifu, or master teacher, was lecturing at me, just me. This was something where he took me aside after I can't remember what, and was just talking at me. I think it was after I told him enlightenment is bullshit. But anyway, that's a story for another time. Also, I'm probably going to bungle up what he said. He was talking at me in Chinese, and I'm this Asian American kid who didn't even want to be there. He said, at the base of the mountain, among the people, if and when you can, you give alms, you feed the hungry, give shelter and physical sanctuary to those who need it. But you can't make everything available to everyone all at once. The knowledge you transmit to the people is just how to be good to each other, how to be good to themselves, how to deal with pain and suffering. There is some knowledge, even after you learn it, that you can never, ever share with others, he told me. If you give divinity, by that I mean the concept of divinity, revealing that this whole layer of another world exists, meaning the esoteric principles in, say, Buddhism, to people who still have not even learned how to be good to one another in this physical world, then you will create chaos and ultimately destroy the physical world. Because the sacred is still power, and power without the wisdom, if understanding of the mysteries isn't attained through personal wisdom, then good can convert to evil quite quickly. The spiritual world cannot exist without the physical, so when you infect the physical world, you are also going to be destroying the spirit world. That's why at the bottom of the mountain, only talk about doing good. The bottom of the mountain isn't where you have conversations about these sacred mysteries. Buddhism, in other words, absolutely has an occult arm to it. It just doesn't share it to the public. Every religion, to be sure, has its occult arm, which is always reserved for the few and always, always kept secret, concealed. That Sifu said to me, if I ever climb to the top of the mountain and find what it is I'm looking for, I cannot take that knowledge back down to the village with me and give it freely to people who haven't even learned the basics of being good to each other. That knowledge, however pure, becomes tainted when it leaves the mountain and can be used for evil. If the occult is truly a science, like I believe it is, then it really is like sophisticated scientific knowledge. In the wrong hands, science and technology can absolutely destroy the world. Okay, but is it even possible to reveal occult knowledge? Hear me out on this one. Divinity is ineffable. Any attempt I make to contain these sacred mysteries in a box of words, to use anything of this physical world to express these sacred mysteries, it is no longer these sacred mysteries. It's but a shell of itself. This is Taoism 101, isn't it? You cannot talk about the Tao. Anything that is spoken is not the Tao. The Tao can only be experienced or witnessed. In other words, it is metaphysically impossible to talk about these sacred mysteries. You can talk around it, you can talk about the logistics, but you can never actually, as in humanly impossible, to speak of the mysteries. So if you try, which is where this whole directive of keeping silent comes in, if you try to speak of the mysteries, you taint the mysteries? Look, I'm not saying I think that, and I'm not trying to assert that's true. I'm adding a huge, huge question mark after that. My question to you is that what occultists and mystics and wise men and women of antiquity are trying to warn us? Almost every esoteric tradition from every part of the world does this, and just millennia of wise and really smart people insist on the secrecy. Whatever it is you learn about these sacred mysteries, keep it to yourself, or keep it only amongst those who have been initiated. How can all of them from all of these different traditions all be wrong? Exactly. So then, does that mean this gut feeling inside of me I've always had is wrong? Because I don't think I'm smarter than the whole body of occultists of all space-time, and yet, if you're telling me to listen to my intuition, my gut. My gut is telling me something is off about this whole hush-hush secrecy thing. What has motivated the production of this platform and pretty much the whole of the body of work I've shared to date is access and giving free access and having faith that people are fundamentally good and wise. Now, here's the thing. Truth is just an idea. It still has to be communicated. I think so much can get lost or distorted in communication of ideas, right? I mean, we all know that. Maybe what occultists of old, much wiser than me, have been trying to convey to us is that the best way to convey truth is to sidestep communication and to convey truth in another alternative way, one that does not require communication, doesn't require words or speech, because words by their very nature cannot be the Tao, cannot fully ever express divinity. If anything, words in the attempt to contain or define divinity just ends up tainting it, allegedly, right? All right, so here's where I'm at right now myself with this whole secrecy and occultism issue. Secrecy and occultism, as I've concluded for myself, isn't about protecting or safeguarding these sacred mysteries. As I believe it, it is humanly impossible to talk about the mysteries, meaning everything I say about it or purport to say about the mysteries immediately disintegrates the sacred aspect. Every word I utter about it is of the mundane only. But those mundane words might be able to get certain sparks going in your own head, and then you can find your own way up the mountain and experience the mysteries for yourself. Secrecy in occultism is about protecting and safeguarding the occultist. The wiser are telling you to keep silent, not because of the whole pearls before swine thing. It's to protect you.
One of the stories we tell about the Chariot card in the Tarot Major Arcana is of the Templars returning from the East, having attained knowledge of the sacred mysteries, or in other words, having found the Holy Grail. In my Spirit Keeper's Tarot card for Key 7, I've written across the Chariot Lux e Veritas, light and truth. The four pillars you see holding up the chariot bear the Phoenician letters for YHVH, which symbolizes the sacred mysteries here. The two sphinxes pulling the chariot are light and truth. The one on the left is light, so there are only eyes and no mouth. The sphinx of light can only see the light, cannot speak of the light. The sphinx on the right is truth, but this sphinx has no eyes to see the light with, only the mouth to speak, because as soon as you speak it, you can no longer see it. And notice how one of the hind legs is stepping on its own tail. I think there is a certain level of self-inflicted pain we all end up experiencing when we speak our truth, especially our truth, our perception and experience of the mysteries of divinity. And that's what I was trying to convey here. I wanted there to be parallels and noticeable connections between the chariot and the Ace of Chalices. The Ace of Chalices is the summer solstice, and Cancer, the zodiac sign assigned to Key 7, links to the point of Cancer, which is the summer solstice. The moment you, the charioteer, attain knowledge of the mysteries, your body and spirit becomes inextricable from the body and spirit of the mysteries.
At least that's my current speculation. The body of the mysteries is invincible and impenetrable, but you, your body and mind, not so much. You're mortal. So I think being mortal and taking into yourself the mysteries means you're in danger of harm, something like that. Keeping silent is about protecting your body and mind, which now houses the mysteries. Now, I do think the implications of that can go very, very deep, but there are also the more superficial and immediate implications. I've found here, and really so has everybody else ever in the history of time, am I right? Found that when you try to reveal these sacred mysteries to the masses, when anyone even gets a subconscious intuitive scent that you have attained knowledge of those mysteries, you become a target. So it's not that you can't bring divine knowledge down from the top of the mountain to the people. It's about you. the person, the messenger who is carrying the knowledge, you're going to get yourself injured in the process. The sacred mysteries are telling you to shut up, not for its sake, but for your own sake. I've always felt a kinship to the concept of hidden in plain sight. I am convinced that I can tell all, just lay it all out there, give you the keys to the kingdom, and still, 99% will not ever figure out how to use the keys to unlock the doors. Only 1% of those who receive the knowledge will know what the fuck to do with it. So the occult will, on its own, by its very nature, always remain occulted. There is humanly nothing I can do to unoccult the occult, if that makes any sense. I can share esoteric knowledge freely. I can disclose the occult and let it lay as transparent as I can possibly make it. But I will always fail at shining a light on it for those who just aren't ready to see it yet. There is humanly nothing I can do to unoccult the occult. I can share all, tell all, break every oath, but the occult will remain occult. The sacred mysteries can never be tainted because the moment it is spoken of, it is no longer sacred. But here's the rub. Should I choose to walk the path of revealing the hidden, then I am also choosing to accept the consequences of becoming a target. And I don't mean just me, I mean you too. I mean anybody who chooses the path of revelation. And I speculate that that's what secrecy and occultism is all about. It's about safeguarding you, the occultist, so you don't end up hurting yourself in your good faith efforts to try to enlighten others. Not to mention, it's an impossible task. You don't have the ability to enlighten others. Enlightenment is a path we each have to choose to experience for ourselves.